Dear students, welcome to our YouTube channel Vidya for Success. In this video, let us continue our study on the characteristic features of gymnosperms. So in our last video, we studied regarding the formation of pollen grains within the male cone, and also we studied how the female gametophyte forms within the female cone. Why we are calling pollen grains as a male gamete? Yes, because it carries male gamete. So male gamete present within the pollen grain. So that pollen grains are called as male gametophyte. And what do you mean by female gametophyte? So female gametophyte is a structure that is actually formed by one of the megaspore. So one of the megaspore develops into female gametophyte. It is called as female gametophyte because it carries female gamete known as egg. Understood? So which actual structure carry the gametes, they are named as gametophytes. So female gametophytes carry female gamete and male gametophyte carries male gamete. Understood? So let us understand about the next developmental step in the gymnosperm. So male cone is ready with the pollen grain and female cone is ready with egg. So egg is ready within the female gametophyte. So what is the next process? So next process is pollination. What do you mean by this pollination? So when the male cone is ready with the pollen grain need to be carried towards the female cone. Otherwise, the further developmental processes does not complete. So, in order to form seed, initially the male gamete should reach towards the female gamete because the male cone is separate, female cone is separate here. So some agents are very essential in order to carry pollen grain towards the female cone. So this process is known as pollination. So pollination is nothing but transfer of pollen grain from male cone towards the ovule in the female cone is called as pollination. So this is the pollination is nothing but the transfer of pollen grain, male gametophyte, from male cone towards the ovule in the female cone is called as pollination. So which agent help in the pollination here? Because some of the agents are very essential in order to carry the pollen grain. Without those agents, pollination does not occur. So in the gymnosperms, the pollen grains are very small. They are microscopic structures, and these microscopic structures are very light in their weight. They are very lighter weight. So they can easily carry through wind current. So air easily carry the male gamete, pollen grain towards the megasporophyll of the female cone. Understood, right? So air current, in order to move in the air current, pollen grain consists of small wing like structure. So those wing like structure helps in um, flying, so that the pollen grain easily carried through the wind current towards the female cone. And in the female cone, the pollen grains exactly fall on the opening of ovule. So ovule, we know ovule is a megasporangia. So megasporangium consists of a small opening. So towards that opening, the pollen grains come and sit. So when it sit on the opening region, it forms a pollen tube. A small tube-like structure will started forming from the pollen grain, that is nothing but a pollen tube. So this pollen tube actually carry male gamete towards the archegonia in the ovule. So in our study we came to know that archegonia, two or more archegonia are present within this single ovule. Understood? So within that archegonia, what is there? Within that archegonia, egg is present. So that it is not much easy to carry the male gamete towards the female gamete. So that pollen grain forms a tube-like structure that is known as pollen tube It carry male gamete towards the archegonia in the ovule. You see here you can observe in the diagram. The first diagram is actually the structure of ovule. So ovule consists of a small opening towards one end. That opening is nothing but micropylar opening. So that is the actual region where the pollen grain sits. So when it reaches the micropylar region, it forms a long tube-like structure that is known as pollen tube. So why the pollen tube will form? So that tube actually carry the male gamete towards the female gamete. You can find there the female gamete is present towards the inner region of the ovule. So pollen grain need to be sent the male gamete towards that particular region, so that it need a tubular structure in order to carry the male gamete. Understood, right? So the pollen tube actually carry the male gamete towards the female gamete. And when the pollen tube reaches the micropylar opening, it discharges its content near the mouth of archegonia. So near the mouth of archegonia, pollen grain discharges all the content, so that male gamete is discharged into the mouth of archegonia. So what is the next step? Next step is fertilization. So when the male gamete reaches towards the female gamete, fusion occurs. Male gamete fuses with the female gamete. So we can see in the second diagram. So male gamete, male egg nucleus, what they have given, that is haploid. Male gamete is actually haploid. Female gamete is also haploid. Clear? So these two haploid bodies, they fuse together and form a diploid body known as zygote. So zygote is actually formed as a result of fusion of male and female gamete. So this is the next development. So zygote is a diploid body that is formed by the fusion of male and female gamete. So what happens after the formation of zygote? So zygote develops into an embryo. So zygote is a diploid body. It undergo repeated mitotic division. That means it form a multiple cells. So that multiple cells going to form a structure that is named as embryo. So embryo is the future plant. Clear? So the formation of future plant is the function of embryo. So this embryo is actually formed from the zygote. So zygote develops into what? Embryo, that we can observe in the third diagram in this picture. So third diagram showing the actual location of embryo within the ovule. So exactly at the center we can find a diploid multicellular structure that is known as embryo. And ovule develops into seed. So we have studied that ovule is the megasporangium. So it leads to the formation of megaspores. Clear? So ovule after fertilization transformed into seed. So this is actually post fertilization changes. That means after the fusion of male and female gametes, some changes can be seen in the female reproductive structure. So ovule is a part of female reproductive structure. So soon after the fertilization, ovule develops into seed. Understood? And zygote develops into what? Embryo. So these two are the structures. They are formed soon after the fertilization. So embryo is present within the seed. Clear, right? So seed formation is very common in the gymnosperm, and seed does not covered by fruit wall because there is no protective covering to the ovule. Ovary is completely absent. So in mango and in guava plant we can see the seeds are covered by a fleshy part. But in the gymnosperm, ovule is the final structure. It is the final structure. There is no further outer covering to the ovule, so that there is no any fruit wall. Seeds are naked. So because of this, the gymnospermic plants are named as naked seeded plants. So seeds are naked. They are not covered by any fruit wall. Understood, right? So this is about the pollination and fertilization takes place in the gymnosperms. Yes, children, we have completed all the characteristic features of the gymnosperm. So we started our study from the main plant. So the main plant in the gymnosperm is sporophytic plant. It produces cones. So in some of the species, male plant is separate, female plant is separate. So male plant produces male cone, female plant produces female cone. So what is the function of cone? Why the male cone is present? So male cone is going to form microspores, and microspores leads to the development of pollen grain. And what is the function of female cone? So female cone leads to the formation of egg. So that there are two kinds of spores formation can be seen in gymnosperms, microspores and megaspores. So because of this, the gymnospermic plants are named as heterosporous plant. Understood, children? And in today's class, we have studied regarding what happens in the gymnospermic plant after the gamete formation. So one step is pollination and the further step is fertilization. Clear, right? So these are all the characteristic features of gymnospermic plant. So by seeing all these things, we can conclude that gymnospermic plants are advanced plants compared to the pteridophytes, because in the pteridophytes we didn't observe the formation of seed and we didn't observe the formation of embryo in all the plants. Only heterosporous plants in the pteridophytic category, they showed the formation of embryo. But some of the primitive plants in the pteridophytes were not shown the formation of embryo, so that gymnospermic plants are more advanced plants in the uh, plant kingdom compared to the pteridophytes. Clear? Yes, I hope you understood today's class. Thank you.